What's going on, Salt Strong Nation? Today we are going to be talking about this Yo-Zuri 3D Inshore Pencil. Now, I mentioned this lure when I made my video on the differences for topwaters when targeting redfish versus sea trout, and a lot of you guys have asked me to do a more in-depth review of this lure because it's a pretty unique topwater. So that's exactly what I'm going to do for you guys today, to give you some pros, some cons, where this lure excels, where it falls short, and show you some on-the-water footage of it in action. So let's go ahead and dive in. To look quickly at the specs of this lure before we really dive in, it's 4 inches long, it weighs half an ounce, it's got 3 ball bearings for the rattle and 2 carbon steel treble hooks. Now, what got the most questions on the last video that I did was the rattle that this creates. It's a high pitch frequency produced by the multiple rattles. With your average topwater spook, you're gonna get 1 large ball bearing that's gonna create a low frequency pitch. And to address a lot of the questions that came from the low frequency versus high frequency pitch that's created by these rattles, I want you to think of a bass drum versus a snare. You're going to be able to notice the bass drum from a longer distance, so that's why those topwater spooks can often bring in predators from longer distances, but the high frequency pitch is more like a snare. If you're up close with it, you're going to be able to zero in on it much more than the bass drum that's that low pitch. So this makes this lure fantastic for when you know where fish are, you're up close and personal on them, and you want to simulate a specific profile of bait. The high frequency pitch that's created by these rattles most closely simulates a small school of shrimp that are clicking their tails, or a small school of bait fish that are fleeing, again clicking their tails. The larger one knocker that is in most spooks is going to simulate one single larger bait fish. So if you really want to dial in on the specific prey that you know predators are after, or you really want to get their attention when you're up close and personal, I highly recommend you go for a multiple rattle that creates a high frequency pitch sound. So that's the first thing in this lure that I really wanted to touch on. The second is the design of the body. It's not terribly aerodynamic. Most topwater spooks are very aerodynamic. When you cast them, you notice that they can go very long distances and you can make very accurate casts. The body of this is a little bit different. It's got that hunched back, and it really does not do well with casting because the torpedo style body can cut through the air very well. This can get caught by the wind at different angles, and I found that it does not cast very far despite it weighing half an ounce, because the wind catches it at odd angles, and it doesn't make for very accurate casting either. Again, I've stated that this lure is great for up close and personal encounters with redfish, so the casting really isn't too much of a factor for me. Now, the good news about this body design is how it's going to help your hookup ratio for reds, and what I mean specifically by that is how it's going to sit in the water. So most topwater spooks sit high up in the column like this, but this lure, this 3D Inshore, is going to sit almost vertically, almost at a 45-degree angle from the surface of the water. And that really helps with your hookup ratio for redfish because their jaws are accustomed to feeding on the bottom. Unlike a trout's or a snook's, which open upward, redfish's open downward. So when they try to hit a topwater plug, a lot of times they miss it because they can't get their jaws over the lure. But when the tail end of this topwater sits further down in the water column, it makes your hookup ratio greatly increase. Now, I'm not saying it's completely perfect, especially with larger redfish. You will sometimes see that they'll send it up in the air, and you'll see a clip of that later on in this video, but I really do notice a higher hookup ratio because these lures sit further down in the water. In addition to that, as I said, redfish are not the best at striking topwater lures, and the action of this lure, the head walk, does not create a giant swing pattern like most topwaters do, like the skitter walks and the spook juniors of the world. This is advantageous for redfish as well because it keeps a very tight pattern that they can keep up with and track on. So regardless of the speed you're working this lure, they can easily keep up with it. So slow walks or fast walks, they're able to know the direction that it's going to go in, and they can more easily attack it. Now, I've already talked about how I don't like how far it casts and how inaccurate it is, but I do want to rag on this lure with one more thing, and it's the quality of the hooks that they put on it. I would highly recommend, as soon as you get this lure, to switch out the hooks. I've used this one for about a week and the hooks are already starting to rust out. And for those of you who ask why I don't immediately change them, I do these reviews with the lure straight out of the box with no modifications. If it was up to me, I would have immediately changed these hooks out myself. Now, you can put a replacement treble on them, but I would highly recommend, just for the health of the fish that you catch, putting on single inline hooks. Plus, it's really going to help your landing ratio. I really find that it doesn't affect the hookup ratio as well. So go ahead and change these hooks out right when you get them. But this really wouldn't be a complete review if I didn't show you guys some on the water footage of this lure in action. So let's go ahead and take a look. So as you guys saw, this can be a great option for up close and personal encounters with redfish. That tight head walk, the high frequency rattles, and the low seating in the water makes it an absolutely killer choice to have in your tackle box when you want to get up close and personal with those reds. So I am going to continue to throw this lure, but I want to reiterate, we are not sponsored by Yo-Zuri, and I like this lure because of my own personal experience with it. But I would like to hear some feedback from you guys as well. If you've used this lure and had good or bad experience, I would like to create a conversation in the comments below with that experience. That way we can have an open forum on the good things about this lure and the bad things, so everyone that's seeing this post, the video and the comments as well, can get a full scope of knowledge on this lure before they buy. So if you guys enjoyed this review, I ask that you please give it a like and you subscribe to our channel, where we have tons of other independent, unbiased reviews on great fishing products like this. But if you also want to see some of the best fishing tips in the inshore saltwater community, I highly recommend you check out the Salt Strong Insider Club. So guys, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.
There's something about the water that'll give you peace, all by yourself or with your family. Live salt strong and wear the line today.